We've got the amazing Bonnie Yates here with us. She's from Tollner Law Offices. She's an amazing mom, an amazing special education attorney. We adore the ground she walks on. And there she is. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hey, hold on a sec. I messed up. I can't. Okay. Here we go. Here we go.
There.
Me and my buttons.
Yeah, I had that happen yesterday where I got caught up in my buttons and I was like, I can't see anything. So I appreciate that. But Bonnie, tell us a little bit about Tollner Law Offices.
Tollner Law Offices is a California law firm. We're a 12 attorney firm with offices in Southern and Northern California, and we represent students with disabilities, whether they're under the IDEA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act, or any other anti-discrimination statute. If you are in California or Arizona and you want to consult with us, we offer a free consultation. You can go to our website, Tollner Law Office's website, TOLLNER, and fill in the form and request a free consultation. And we try to bring topics to the show that will educate you about your legal rights under the federal Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, as well as to some extent under your state law. So I'm feeling a little guilty today because everything that I have is California. And I'm gonna try not to do that. I'm gonna try to make it more general, but to some extent, as California goes, so the rest of the states go. And what I plan to do is I plan to start at the very beginning of the education code with you guys and go all the way through this year. So we're going to take you from start to finish. It'll start with child find and eligibility. It'll end with what happens if you have a due process hearing. But I got sidelined because I got some really good information about independent study and some other things that I wanted to share with you. So acknowledging that unfortunately it's California state stuff, we're going to talk about it anyway. And maybe it'll just sort of give you some ideas for dealing with the stuff in your state. So it's interesting. California passed a law providing independent study, AB 130, for school year 2021-2022. It replaced distance learning from last year. And so very few public schools in California have a separate online type academy the way they did last year. And that's causing problems for some parents. Interestingly, AB 130 said that it was not supposed to apply for students who had IEPs under Ed Code Section 56,000. And I thought that was a good thing because I didn't like the idea that somebody who had probably a fairly service-heavy IEP was going to get independent study instead. However, other attorneys in the state of California, including Valerie Vanneman, who is, I think it's fair to say Valerie forgot more about special ed, has forgotten more about special ed than any of us ever learned. She's really, and this is a shout out to her. She's incredibly dedicated, smart, and creative. She took a look at this thing and she said it discriminates against children with disabilities because everybody else can have independent study and they can't. So there have been some refinements to the whole thing, and that's what I want to talk to you about. So if you are a person who needs an alternative to going to school because your child is immunocompromised or otherwise susceptible, you can do independent study as follows. Your IEP team can authorize independent study, and that gets you around the prohibition that's in AB 130 itself, saying it doesn't apply for special ed kids. You don't need to be able to complete work independently to be an independent study. Well, that's one of those great things that people say, and it's almost like a joke, right? It's called independent study, but you don't need to complete work independently. Okay. Well, what I haven't been able to figure out is what does that mean then instead, and what is your independent study going to look like? So I can't really answer that for you today, which is probably the thing you want to know most. But here's what I can tell you: you can request independent study, and you can add it to your IEP by amendment. That means you don't have to meet. It could all be done with an exchange of emails. Um, if when you meet, you can't reach an agreement about what the independent study is going to look like, then the services that you have in your last agreed upon IEP will be your stay put services. But they must consider your request for independent study in a meaningful way. Independent study, if you opt into it, is a change of placement. Just like if we moved you from a regular education class to a special education class, it would be a change of placement. So it gets treated as such. There's no availability of independent study for preschool children that have an IEP. However, it can be available for students that are um, over the ages of 18 but not yet 22. So that's just some stuff to, get your little mice running on the wheel inside your head that Shannon was talking about, running faster. If you think that that would be helpful, charter schools do not have to offer independent study, so that's just something to know if you're in a charter school. If you do ask for independent study, you're entitled to both a pre-participation conference with the school principal and your child's teacher. And as part of the independent study plan, they have to tell you every week how much they have to tell you how much synchronous, in other words, face to face, real time teacher interaction you're going to have in independent study every week. So, in other words, how much synchronous time. You don't need a doctor's note. You do need to request it via the IEP team. If they refuse, they have to give you prior written notice. If you're in independent study and you want to come back to school, they have to implement it in 5 days. So that's quick. And then the California Department of Education has updates and webinars on this topic at its website. So that's interesting. And they also included a sample letter that I'm actually going to read because I thought it was sort of good and it probably puts the issues into clear relief. Dear IEP team and superintendent, I'm the parent of blank who has blank. My child has an IEP. My child is at increased risk of exposure to COVID-19 and for severe outcomes from COVID-19 because my child was able to participate in distance learning last year with access, pick one, some of most of all of their services in their IEP. My child's health would be at risk by attending school and or receiving special education services in person. As such, my child's independent circumstances require instruction and services delivered through a virtual learning model with services and supports through the IEP. I met with my child's IEP team on blank date to ask for independent study, but the IEP team is refusing to consider independent study. I'm asking that you allow my child to enroll in independent study with supports and services. Alternately, I'm requesting you allow my child to continue in distance learning with supports and services in order to meet my child's individual needs, and so on. So I'll send this letter on to you, Shannon, so you can put it up where you put things like that up. But that's a little piece of business relating to independent study that I think is good. It's going to come down to the individual plan and the individual team, but we know that some people definitely need this option. So,
So I have a bunch of questions.
okay, good.
Okay. So you said we don't really know if your child cannot do independent study independently. We don't really know what that's going to look like right now. But I guess my big question
That's
is,
the IEP team is going to decide what it's going to look like.
so the school has a responsibility to figure it out. The parent doesn't have to figure it out.
Correct.
It's not,
It's a placement like any other placement. So the responsibility is on the district.
because I think what we
Let's just
saw.
say let's just pretend it's a resource room placement. Okay. So the parent goes and has a meaningful discussion with the team and says to the team, hey, you guys are the experts. Tell me what this is going to look like.
Yeah.
and then
But
they
I
have
think that the fear is that for a lot of parents, when they were doing the distance learning, they would send the packet home and the parent was responsible. Well, they made the parent feel like they were responsible for the child getting the work done and getting it turned in. And then the parent
yeah,
goes,
well,
how did I suddenly become the teacher?
all those people that did that have great cases, and they should file them before March 16th, 2020, because it's very clear that having the parent provide the instruction does not constitute proper implementation of the IEP.
Let me just clarify. So they should file by March 16th, 2022, correct?
Yeah. What
Yeah.
I meant by that is COVID started March 16th, 2020. You have a 2-year statute of limitations in California and in many of the other states. If your um, objection is that your child didn't receive a free, appropriate public education during COVID, and the only way your IEP got implemented at all was because your parents helped you implement it. Districts have pretty much conceded that they're liable for that time period from March 16th through extended school year 2020, and sometimes after that. So you
But
people are sitting on cases that are as strong a case as you're ever going to have. You can probably get a lot of stuff without even filing. You can probably get a lot of stuff through informal dispute resolution. The attorneys are dying, they're overwhelmed, and they're getting hit so hard by cases, and districts are just trying to settle things because they know they don't have a defense to at least the first COVID.
okay, so
That
if
was
you
your first
had that in the
question.
past, So if you had that in the past, you should be getting an attorney like Bonnie or going to copaa.org and finding somebody who can help you to negotiate this. But moving forward, Bonnie, for anybody who's like, what I'm seeing in parents is they're so afraid right now to ask the school for anything because they're afraid they're going to get stuck teaching again. So the past does not equal the present or the future. If you are asking for independent study for your child because you want them to be home learning, you should not be the teacher. Is that correct?
That should be the case, but I don't know that it will be the case. I mean, the problem is that the public school teachers went back to teaching in their classrooms, and the public schools don't have a lot of extra teachers to provide learning to students who are at home. So it's really going to be on an individual basis how well the district actually does with this, and they might not do well. I'm just here to tell you that there is an in-home option, and
Okay.
and that you can individually design it with your IEP team, and whatever they say they're willing to do, they have to give you. So
Okay.
maybe you can convince them. What they're going to want to give you is a home hospital teacher. Home hospital instruction is for temporary disabilities only, and it's not intended for special education students except for very temporarily. It is not a substitute for the kind of learning that your child needs, and it's not even right for them to offer it, but they might try.
But
So
we have seen, Bonnie, that some people are able to get the independent study in their home and get the school to contract with the ABA provider that they're already using at home to have them be the instructional aid for the work that's being done at home. We've seen that. It's
yeah,
not
I mean,
easy.
that's nothing wrong with that if you can make the insurance company play ball, right? But
Well,
otherwise,
but it doesn't go through the insurance. The school pays for it.
well, but the insurance is paying for them to be there too. So I don't even want to get involved in that. Let's
They
just say,
fund, they do different funding sources. I've seen it, but
okay,
it's
let's
hard.
just say that it is possible for the school district to pay for supports and services in your home, and they could look in different ways. And also they can pay for parent training to support the independent study, and that's, I believe, up at the CDE website where they have the webinars and the information also. You can ask for parent training at any IEP meeting if you feel like you need it in order for your child to get benefit from their IEP.
There we
So
go.
think
Okay.
about it, okay?
So the other question that I had for you, let's see if I can find it in the recesses of my mind. I might have to come back to it. I can't think what the other, because it was a big question.
Wait till
Oh,
you're my age.
I know exactly what it was. We were told, everybody's been told, if you're going to choose to have your child be at school, then your child is at school unless they get exposed to COVID. You can't just suddenly decide to go home and learn. And if you are at home, you can't just decide to come back to school. They have like each school has like certain dates that when a new semester starts or whatever, you can't, but they all tell
That's
parents the
not
same
for
thing.
people
You
with
can't go back
that's
and forth.
that's not for people with an IEP.
There we go.
Okay.
That's what I
For
wanted to
people with the IEP, the AB 130 says you can come back into instruction 5 days after notifying the district. And if you need to leave the district and physical district and do independent study, then you can request an IEP team meeting and ask them if they're agreeable to this. Will they do it by amendment? And you even have to meet. But I would have that meeting because I'd be very concerned about not, having a discussion and getting agreement on how we're going to do this, right?
But to be clear, these rules that you just stated are clearly defined for California, not necessarily for, say, Texas. Is
Correct.
that correct? Okay.
Each state is gonna handle it differently, and each school district is probably gonna handle it differently. And some school districts in California decided that they like having a virtual academy. They think maybe it's something useful to them in special ed disputes. I don't know what the reasoning was. Maybe that's what the reasoning is. Maybe it increases the pass rate. Maybe it means you can take more students in your district and have, the ADA for each student. But anyway, you're not locked into independent study if
Okay.
you have an IEP, but you do have a right to access it.
But if
Uh,
you were just as an attorney, and I know, that you're not licensed in, let's say, Texas, because I know a lot of people who have ARDs and they were told special education, they were told you have to choose. On this date, you have to choose whether your child is going to be for the whole semester or part. Should they press on that and say my child has an IEP that's not,
Well,
look in California?
you can look at the Texas Ed Code and you can go to see what protection and advocacy in Texas is saying. If he's not retired, there's a very fine lawyer in Texas, Martin Cirkiel, Cirkiel, I believe. And he'd be the person to answer that. I don't know anything about Texas law. I used to be licensed there. I decided I really didn't like the judges there. They're not very student friendly, so I left. So now what we're going to talk about is AB 104, which deals with retention grade changes in high school graduation requirements. And this is not limited to people that have IEPs. This is intended to address problems caused for potentially all students, whether in general ed or with an IEP, because of school closure. Okay. So AB 104 provides new options to address student learning loss due to COVID-19, school closures, and distance learning. AB 104 makes three specific changes to the law. First, it establishes a new retention request process. Second, it allows for grade changes for high school students. Third, it provides an exemption to high school graduation requirements for specific juniors and seniors. Okay, let me say something about grade changes before we get to AB 104. Getting a district to get a teacher to change their grades or to recalculate the amount of credits that a student has is a very difficult process. Teachers are afforded tons of autonomy when it comes to their grading process. And so it's not easy normally to get a teacher to adjust a grade. Okay. So AB 104 addresses that, but it also has a process whereby you can request retention. Now, parents that I talk to have heard of retention before. It sort of comes out of the era when, maybe I was going to elementary school and stuff, where if you weren't meeting grade standards, you were retained. Retention became unpopular um, because districts felt that if you retained a student with an IEP, it was tantamount to admitting that the IEP hadn't offered FAPE, right? So in my career as a special ed attorney, there have been very few kids where districts allowed them to be retained, although there were a few, but it's not common. So the retention request process that the state has approved is only for the 21-22 school year, right? It's addressing COVID. If you would like your child to be retained, you must send a written retention request to the school. Your child must have received a D, an F, a no pass, or similar grade in at least half of their classes in the 2020-2021 school year. You cannot submit a retention request for a student who is in 12th grade in the 2020-21 school year because they've already graduated. Once you submit a retention request, the school must hold a meeting. This meeting must be held within 30 days of your request. The meeting must include you, your child, an administrator, and a teacher. The team will talk about your retention request. The team must talk about the following: learning recovery options. This includes specific interventions and supports and access to prior courses in which your child received a D or F letter grade in the 2020-21 school year, credit recovery, or other support. Your child's academic data, any information on whether retention is in your child's best interest, including academic and social interests, the research on the effects of retention, and the types of interventions and supports that have been shown to help students. The school must make a decision on whether to retain your child within 10 days of the meeting. Any decision to retain must be consistent with your child's IEP. If your child is retained, they will repeat the same grade that they were in last year. The school must offer your child extra intervention and supports. If your child is not retained, the school can still offer your child specific interventions and supports and can also offer your child access to courses from the 2020-21 school year that your child received a D or an F in, credit recovery, or other supports. Do you have questions before I go on?
I do. If we could sort of, because it's funny, I just was talking to a parent yesterday in California who was saying that the distance learning was so bad that their child is behind, and should be in a certain year in their high school career, and they aren't because of the distance learning. So you're telling me that there should be accommodations made to catch that young person up.
Correct. For this 1 year. Exactly.
Wow.
Um, and it's interesting because I think what a lot of us did, we did retention in a different way. We kept our kids in an extra year of preschool. So my son didn't start kindergarten until he was 6.5. And that was very deliberate on my part to give him an extra year of developmentally appropriate speech and peers and so on. So then the next part of this is that how you request a grade change. Um, you have to have gotten a poor grade, and you can request that they change the grade to a pass, no pass, and the school must grant your request. Schools cannot limit the number or type of classes eligible for grade changes. Grade changes cannot negatively affect your child's grade point average. Grade changes cannot impact a student's eligibility for state financial aid. For admission, Cal State University must accept a transcript with pass, no pass grades for any university applicant who is enrolled in a California high school. See, this is for high schoolers from the 2021 school year to the 2023-2024 school years. Schools must notify families of the grade change option. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. Schools must post a notice on their website and provide families with written notice of this option. Once your school provides you with the written notice, you have only 15 days to submit your grade change application to the school. The school must change your child's transcript. The school must notify you of the grade change within 15 days of receiving the grade change application.
Yeah, I wish we'd had this conversation a year ago, because I'll be honest with you.
The law wasn't in effect a year ago, Shannon.
Right.
It took place,
Well, there we have it. There we have it. But
it
this
was
would have been the
it was
difference.
a reaction to what happened during COVID.
Right. Well, my son graduated with honors, but my son should have graduated with high honors.
Hmm.
But because of COVID and COVID stupidity, he didn't.
This
And
wouldn't have helped him. It wouldn't have helped him to change his high grades to pass no pass grades, right?
well, so it only would have helped if he had failed something, then you're
That's
saying.
what it seems to be
Okay.
doing. Yes,
All right. Well,
exactly. But
um,
I
how
understand how you feel. Yeah, he did all the work, and
yeah. Yep. And, I think sometimes teachers' inabilities to cope with what was happening really, I mean, like, not, yeah, I know it affected our kids' ability to access the curriculum in a way that made sense to them. It's, hard all the way around. But interesting, very, very interesting. So if your child
so
has failed something, there's a possibility that they can recover credit and still stay
correct.
on track and maybe graduate when they're supposed to, is what I'm
Correct.
hearing.
And here's the last little piece of business about AB 104. Heretofore, it's always been necessary for you to complete your uh, district requirements for high school graduation and the state requirements. AB 104 provides for just the 2021 school year for an exemption for juniors and seniors in the 2020-2021 school year who are not on track to graduate from high school in 4 years. These students only have to complete the statewide high school graduation requirements. They do not have to complete the district's separate high school graduation
Okay.
requirements.
But
Schools
is
must,
that only for kids with an IEP?
nope. Mm-mm.
Okay.
It's for juniors and seniors. Schools
Wow.
must give these students the opportunity to complete statewide graduation requirements through a fifth year of school.
Okay.
So that's the last little part of AB 104, but it's important.
Okay, and then we are right out of time. So Bonnie, I thank you so much. I did find the Circeal law and put that in the comments, Mark, that you were talking about. So if somebody's in Texas, because you mentioned him, we want to remind everybody though that you are at Tollner Law Offices, and if somebody is in California, they can reach out to you, and they'll have to provide some information, but you do provide a free talk with them to see where they stand. So tell them, or Traven, did you just put up, tell them where they can reach Tollner Law Offices, Bonnie.
You can reach Tollner on the website. You can call me directly, 310-245-1968. My email is in the website.
Fantastic. I thank you so much, Bonnie. I thank everybody at Tollner Law Offices for lending you to us for this hour. Want to remind everybody, tomorrow we're back live with Dr. Temple Grandin. It's your last opportunity. If you've got a question for her, we're not taking live questions tomorrow, but she will be answering them live. Send the questions now. Last opportunity to send me questions. I'm finishing putting the list together in the next hour. So send me questions and we'll have Dr. Grandin on live tomorrow. Bonnie, thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you next week, and we're going back to the very beginning.
There we
Child
go.
finding eligibility.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you to all of you. See you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.